So I think I know and have met almost everyone here on the screen. I'm Conaloo Williams, and I'm the Human Resources Officer. And we're here tonight because we want to discuss negotiations for transportation, the transportation salary schedule. And we first of all want to thank you so much for taking time after your long day of work to come here and to negotiate with us. We value the collaboration and the communication, and most importantly, your time, because I can imagine you all wear different hats in your roles. And so thank you so much for that. We have a presentation today that we've put together that we thought might help build some context around the reason why we're here at this point today, because we were together just not too long ago in late spring, finishing up our negotiations. And so just wanted to kind of start with that. And then we also want to provide some time for you to ask us any questions kind of along the way. And then our hope is that this is the time that we can take to make this happen tonight. But we will, see how things go. Are there any questions or comments from anyone on the team? All right. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I don't think so, unless somebody else has something.
All right, Hannah's going to go into presentation mode here. And so we're here, as I said, to talk about the transportation salary schedule. And we'll go ahead and go on to the next slide. And we'll be making a copy of this for you after we present, that you'll be able, everyone on your team will have access to. And Hannah, can you take us to the next slide? So this section will be about Carol kind of giving us some context about where we've been. And then we'll also be going through the presentation, kind of talking about the process for hiring bus drivers, and then also what our proposal will be. So I'll go ahead and turn it to Carol.
Oops, thank you, Kana. And if my screen suddenly twitches or moves, it's because I have my fur baby sidekick is balancing on this, and he's some reason not happy tonight. So the mom is back at work. But basically, this is just to give you guys an overview of where we've been and where we are as far as the driver situation that we have going right now. So we kind of did a green, yellow, red zone. Green is when we have been completely 100% staffed with bus drivers. We have not been in that position since 2014, 15, around in there. Yellow, what I call the yellow zone, is where we have really been functioning since about 2015, which is we're between 25 and 30 down, but with some adjustments, we're making it happen. We started looking at ways to eliminate some services, even in the yellow zone. So right now we are in the red zone, and we have been in the red zone since last June. We are currently, and actually this is updated, we're 49 down. If the ones who are in the process, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the process of what it entails to become a bus driver. But right now, if everybody that's in the process passes, we will have 49 open driving positions as of today. So if I can get the next slide. One of the things that was interesting as we were looking into this and previously is when we talk about services, I think it's always a good reminder that traditionally in a school district, the majority of classified employees live within the attendance area of the district that they work for. This is very true for Hillsborough. 86.6% of classified staff live in the Hillsborough School District attendance area. And I would guess the majority of those have children or grandchildren, nieces and nephews, but family members that we provide service to. So I think it's always good to kind of tie that back to, when we start talking about having to reduce services for students, we're talking about reducing services for even our own staff. And that's always a huge worry to me, especially for my own staff, but I know in the kitchen, in facilities, most of that staff has to be to work about the same time that their children are getting on the bus. So it also sort of creates what I call the perfect storm of, I need to be at work, so I'm counting on that bus to get here, but the bus didn't come. Now I'm late for work, and it just starts this sort of this cycle of events that really impacts not only our community but our own staff. Next slide, please. So just to catch, I know some of you on this screen already know this, some of you may not, but when we went into this process, we went into it kind of in phases because we knew it was going to be a big change to kind of pull us up to make us competitive within the industry. So some of the things that we have already done, what we call phase one, is we really push for recruitment in our hiring efforts over a lot of different transports. How about platforms? We, we have done postcard, mailers, walk-in interviews, banners, advertised on billboards. I'm trying to think, bus benches, and now we're also starting with social media and some of those other things to really get the word out, to get in. One of the things that we have also done is we were working with Indeed, the search engine, and we've been very successful with that in getting applicants and getting people through the door. One of the other things we looked at was removing some of the cost barriers. It is very expensive to go through a process to become a professional driver, but even more so, I think, a school bus driver. So one of the things we eliminated is that we are no longer asking the applicant to pay for pre-employment drug testing, as well as we're looking at the fingerprinting process too, that leads to that background check, to take some of that out. One of the things that became very apparent in the last 8 months is that if you are a driver, you can shop the market. And that's not just school bus drivers, but any professional driving that holds a CDL. So it's not even about wages and benefits and hours, but it's a lot of the other little things is that we just have to make ourselves competitive within the hiring market. Next, we looked at and we made some adjustment that now we hire all drivers at 7-hour positions, and anybody who's within transportation that was below 7 hours became a 7-hour employee, which entitles them to 100% of the district's contribution towards benefits. That was another big thing. So current employees were moved, and then we began hiring at that 7-hour position threshold too, so that everyone would get in transportation that wants it I can't even talk, it qualifies for 100% of the district's portion of the benefits coverage. Next slide.
And that's, I'll take this one. So this next slide is talking a little bit about phase two. And phase two is a most recent phase that went into effect on August 19, when HCU and HSD signed an MOA increasing the initial starting wage for newly hired bus drivers to step 5, or equivalent to $23.58 per hour. And in addition to that, bus drivers hired in the 22-23 school year that were previously placed on steps 1 through 4 were also placed on step 5. Now, not only has something like this been implemented in the past, but both the union and the district acknowledge, and based on what Carol just shared, there is an overwhelming shortage of bus drivers. And HCU and HSD also completely understand the district's lawful obligation to provide transportation to students so they can access an education, but also have the ability to participate in certain extracurricular activities. So this was a very big part of phase 2, which was just accomplished, and we're very happy that it did happen. Since that went into effect, we've had more applicants come forward and through the process of becoming bus drivers, and our hope is that that will continue so we can fill that gap as soon as possible. Next slide.
Hannah, could you refresh, just because I made a change there? I just wanted to see, this is kind of a halfway point. Are there any questions that you folks have before we move on to the next step? Kira?
Yeah, when we were talking about this, because we saw a portion of this presentation on August 19th, and wasn't the number of vacant positions lower at that point than it is now?
I think it was still about, it was probably like 48, 49, 50. You know, it's such a long process. It's, you know, it can shuffle pretty quickly. I do know that at one point we were up as high as 56, and I sort of stopped counting at 50. You know, by that time it was a lot, and internally we had the number, but it just didn't, I didn't put it out on a lot of information.
We've also had, just since we've talked, Kara, is we've had some people leave or retire, resign, and then we have people that are coming in. So it's kind of like this, a little bit of, you know, moving forward and then moving back and moving forward and moving back. And so we're still within that 50 range. So that was a great question, because I could see why you're like, this number seems the same when we haven't done things, but we've had some folks that have resigned and retired and taken other positions in the meantime. Any other questions? All right, we'll keep going forward. So as we move from phase 2 to phase 3, we're looking at the current contract language, which affords HSD to track and use 12 charters per the contract. And we were in need, because of fall sports, to think about that differently. We can pick up students after the 4:30 p.m. mark, but we can't get them there if they need to get there in the middle of the day. So anything before that time requires us to use a charter. And so we count charters in the past. If you go to your destination and then you're brought back by a charter, that's a full use of one charter. Well, what was happening is that we could use half a charter to get students to their location and then have our HSD bus drivers pick up students in the evening from their events. And so we were able to make that adjustment and appreciate the support of HCU and wanting to support students to have a full experience with things versus us having to cancel any activities in athletics. And so we targeted 50 as our number. Because when we calculated all of the sports across the 4 comprehensive high schools, it was about 150 to 160 activities that were, and athletics that were taking place for students. And just thinking about students' mental health and making sure that they have access to activities, because that's often the thing that gets them to school. You know, I'm a parent of an 11th grader, and I see that I will say, how's school going? He'll say, oh, it's kind of boring, but I'll ask him about his activities or the athletics. And that's when his face kind of lights up, his eyes kind of sparkle because of his interest in those things that he gets to choose to do. And I feel like a lot of our students feel that way. Another thing that we've also purchased were T20 activity vehicles to get students to their athletics and activities. And that doesn't require a CDL requirement per ODE, and that limits it to 14 passengers. And then we're training our coaches and assistant coaches to ensure that they're trained appropriately. We'll go ahead and go on to the next slide. So we're here on September 12th in phase 4, and we're here to negotiate a new transportation salary with a focus on the new bus base rate for bus drivers. This does require board approval, and just like what we've done in the past, we go through negotiations. Our union partners then ratify it, and then we bring it to the board. And I think the long-term strategy is to minimize those bus driver vacancies so that we can get back to that green light operational zone where we had, 185 bus drivers, and we were able to not have to use charters. We want our HSD bus drivers taking our students to athletics, to activities, because we know those relationships are so important to our students as well. And, we've also, just to say, we've done some interim bargaining in the past. And so this has happened before. So Saide is going to talk about the requirements, just because I think it's important to talk about what that looks like as well.
Yeah, and I'm just going to talk at a very high level, and then I think Carol's going to go into more detail. But so what we have here is just a very brief overview, very high level requirements to become a bus driver, and also the level of responsibility that comes with the position. And sometimes we don't know all the nuances around the position. And so it's really important to really understand the position carefully. And while we hold positions in our district, we all hold positions in our district, and we all have requirements and responsibilities, and we understand that. But it's also important that we understand that bus drivers are held to a certain standards and expectations, both on and off work. And these greatly exceed what we would expect from many other positions held by HSD employees in our district. So it takes approximately 6 weeks of specialized training to become a bus driver, and Carol will get into more details with that. You need to hold a commercial driver's license, and you also have to have an Oregon school bus driver certificate. So you have to have both of those things to be able to drive a bus. There's also the piece around managing student behavior while you are transporting those students. And it's very different than managing student behavior in a classroom, potentially with another staff member, another colleague, and a licensed staff member there in a school setting. Managing them on a moving vehicle is completely different. And then bus drivers must ensure the safety of students, not only the students in the bus, but also around the vehicle. So you have students crossing in front of the vehicle, you have pedestrians walking by. So the level of responsibility that they have vastly exceeds what many of our positions that we hold in the district have currently. And I'm going to turn it over to Carol so she can talk a little bit about each of these specific timelines to become a bus driver.
So to become a bus driver, there's a lot of steps, and there's a lot of steps that they have to go through before they actually even physically come to transportation and we start training them. So just to give you some highlights, as I was going through and I was trying to pick, and go put down each piece, and I was listening to Saide talk, and I thought I forgot a couple of steps in this. So, but this just kind of gives you a rough estimate. So once an applicant comes in and we interview them, and the first thing that we have to do before we even give them a tentative offer is that they have to be pre-employment drug tested. That is a state and federal requirement, more so at the federal level. You have to have a clean drug screen before you can apply to get a CDL. Once we get that back, and that process alone can take a few days to get the results back, then we make them a tentative offer. And as soon as they accept it, we set them up for a DOT what's called a DOT ODE physical examination, including a PCT exam, which is physical capacities test. Why they are waiting for that appointment, and as soon as we send them a tentative offer, we'd say, please go to the DMV and get a CDL manual, commercial driver's license manual, because they have to obtain a CDL learner's permit before we can physically start training them. So just to get the CDL learner's permit, they have to take and successfully complete 4 written tests. The first one is the general knowledge test. That gets them just the basic learner's permit, but on top of that, they need to have a passenger endorsement, which requires a written test, a school bus driver's endorsement, which requires a written test, and an air brake endorsement, which also requires a test. Hopefully, in a perfect world, they have taken those tests by the time they go through and get their physical exam, because the DMV will not issue them a permit until they have in their possession what is called a medical certificate, and that is what they get from the physician who is on a federal registry of physicians that can do that particular type of physical. So next slide, please. So once they have all of that, then they can physically come in and start training. All of the training for ODE is required to be done one-on-one with a certified driver trainer that has gone to school at ODE to get that certification. It all has to be done one-on-one, no more than 4 hours a day, and that has to be broken up into 2 2-hour increments per day. ODE requires a minimum of 15 hours to go through this training I'm going to talk about here. Reality is the average person takes 30 hours. It is rare. And I'm talking like in my 30-year career, I could probably tell you 3 or 4 people who did it in 15 hours. So we always average about 30. Some take more, some take less, but the average is 30. So during that training, part of the training that they go through is, I'm going to list it out here. As best I can remember it all, it's the pre-trip inspection, which also includes proper mirror adjustments. That alone can take the average applicant a week just to get through that. It's quite extensive. Reference point driving, what they call serpentine maneuvers and backing maneuvers, rural driving, urban driving, freeway driving, including lane changes, proper left and right turns, student stops, and railroad crossings. Next slide, please. Additionally, once they get through that average of 30 hours of training, that must be done in every type of vehicle that school bus that we have on the lot, depending on the size and the model of it, versus if it's a conventional, which has the nose, or a transit that's flat in the front. Once they do that and we feel that they can successfully pass the tests, then they go on and they are required to take a pre-trip inspection test, which can take about an hour, and that's out physically in a bus. Basic skills test, which is a lot of the backing maneuvers, that can take 30 to 45 minutes. And then finally, a behind the wheel road test, which can take 45 to 50 minutes. Part of what I also forgot to mention in here is they also have to get in a first aid class. Excuse me. But now I'm going to cough. Excuse me. Oh, now I've upset the dog. Hang on. Okay, so then they have to take, they also have to get a first aid card. And they also have to complete what's called core class, which is basically, we call it bus driving 101, but it's an 8-hour class. Excuse me. Additionally, just because we didn't have enough to do, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration also passed a new criteria. Sorry. A new criteria that all CDL holders, new CDL holders, and this is not just for school bus drivers, it's for anyone with a commercial driver's license. They have to go through a what they call an entry-level driver training process, which is an additional classroom training. They can do it virtually, which is how we set it up, that they do it virtually, but that's an additional 10 hours that they have to take. And they have to have this particular portion of the training, that classroom training, done before we can actually test them to get their CDL. So again, you look at everything they've gone through, and just the physical training alone can take an additional 4 weeks. And that's kind of where that 6 weeks, the average of 6 weeks. Some can take more, some can take less. Not everyone passes. And that can also affect that fluctuation. You know, we say driving the school bus is easy. It's when you put the kids on it that it makes it fun. So we spend a lot of time with them during this time working on pupil management. They also ride routes so that they can observe other drivers in this process. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Hannah. I think this is where I come in and share a little bit about our proposal tonight. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It is the end of a long Monday, and I am thankful for your time. Per the MOA, the transportation salary schedule has been reviewed. So there was kind of a two-step piece to the agreement. And so one was for us to be really reviewing the transportation salary schedule, the whole thing. And what we found are, for folks that aren't as familiar with the transportation schedule, bus drivers are on row D, and row E is the only other row impacted by the proposal to increase the bus driver wages. And on row E sits 4 dispatcher positions. And so our evaluation is complete, and our proposal is going to include an increase to both rows D and E. So in addition to the current MOA, step 5 on row D becomes the new step 1 permanently. The new steps on D, 6 through 9, are calculated in the same way all of our other salary schedules are designed. They're all structured to have a 3% per step increase, with 4% applied to step 9. And we're proposing that we use the same methodology to row E. And again, there are 4 FTE impacted by that. So that step 5 would become the new step 1, and 6, 7, 8, 9 are going to be new steps in the schedule. And those are the proposed changes to the transportation schedule. Okay, and everybody likes to get to the nitty-gritty and really look at what the changes are. You can see the current schedule across the top there. Terrible formatting, I apologize for that. Google Slides and Excel don't always play nice together. You can see right in the middle there, the proposed schedule. That would be the new changes for the current year, again, retroactive to July 1st. And then down below is the difference. So you can see for each one of those what the difference is between our original schedule for 22-23. Okay. And so I know that you guys, obviously, we all care about the financial impact of a change of this sort, and it does impact a lot of staff members. So I went ahead and ran those calculations out. This does include the payroll costs that the district would incur alongside the increase in wages that go out. So that's included here. The total impact for the year would be just over $1.2 million. And because these are transportation grant reimbursement eligible positions, we are calculating in that 70% reimbursement from the state in terms of the increase to the grant that we should expect to receive. We're not the only district in the state making changes like this, so I'm hoping that that 70% stays strong. And we won't find that out until towards the end of next year. But these are our current estimates based on the information we have today. So the current budget impact is just over $360,000 to make this change. And we're anticipating that is gonna be offset by the savings that we're seeing in our late hires. We're hoping to fill all 50 positions, but by the time we do that, we anticipate the savings will have easily offset this increase that we're proposing here tonight. Okay, everybody's favorite slide. I think it's the last one. And I'll go down it, and then I'd like to invite my team to give anything I missed, and then I think we can entertain some questions. So our additional bargaining session, we have a tentative one. If it's needed, if we can't come to agreement this evening, is September 21st. I don't think I'm alone in hoping that we can do it in one deal, but I also know that it's very impactful to a lot of people. We would ask that this is ratified by HCU so that we can make this permanent shift. And then our school board, of course, would have to approve it as well. So the next board meeting regular session is September 27th. The work session after that is on October 11th, and they generally don't do action items at the work session, but it depends. If that's part of the negotiation implementation schedule, then we could ask the board to consider it at that time. And then our following regular session is the 25th of October. And then just a reminder, everyone who went through the last bargain is aware of this, but for us to be able to actually implement the change, all the dust has to settle by the 1st of the month for payroll to be able to process a retroactive pay. Phew. Okay, gonna mute now.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you, everyone.
I just wanted, I've been thinking a lot about this for the last several months, just because I've been in conversations with Carol and not getting any applicants to apply this summer. When we went through a whole salary study that we felt like was going to be competitive, and then come to find out, our neighboring districts have increased their wages. And so trying to, say that we're done, but then also be responsive to the recruitment needs for those positions. And one of the things I keep thinking about is filling these bus driver positions relieves workload and reduces stress and pressures for our dispatchers, our routers, and everyone who holds a CDL, whether that's a mechanic or any other person. And I think, having to cover for someone for a short period of time, like they're out sick, or maybe don't have you don't have enough drivers for a short period of time, people can do that in the short period. But this has now become a long period, and we have to think about the decisions that we're making today and how that's going to have an impact on our future for not only our staff and their retention, also for recruitment, and then also thinking about our students. And I always come back to wanting to have our current HSD bus drivers be the ones who are taking our students to these events. And there's just a connection that happens there, and it's so important. And I also think about just the long-term effects of having to put my work aside consistently and step into driving, and how that affects people in the long term as well. And I really appreciate everyone coming together for this conversation. I really appreciate all of the folks in transportation who have to step out of their work and step into covering so that we have routes covered. And so just wanted to end with that. Michelle?
Yeah, thank you. I probably should have paid more attention to Carol's information about the training. I mean, these are highly trained drivers in giant vehicles, and this is the absolutely safest way to get students back and forth. And so I know that we're looking at other options, because we have to do something that truly to have qualified staff members that have been vetted and trained through all of these steps. I wasn't even aware. Carol said 6 weeks. I'm like, what are they doing for 6 weeks? But I have a much better idea about that now, and the level of dedication it takes to get through the training, the written test before you even get to drive a bus. So I know that can be intimidating to a lot of folks. So I just really appreciate that.
So I guess I have a question about your guys' proposal first. So it's step D, and what's the other range? Not step
It's row D and E.
D and E. So I guess I'm curious, like, and I don't know if you said anything about it, but like, how are steps going to be implemented? Like, if you're moving, right now you've said, okay, we're hiring people now at step 5. Anybody who's below step 5, they're going to be, moved up to step 5. And if we're making step 5 step 1 and then moving up to step 9 from there, how are people going to be like, how are they going to fall on the new steps now that the current step system has kind of been thrown up in the air a little bit?
I think I can tell you, just based on how I calculated the cost to increase, was that the step 5 being new step 1, the new hires would be they would go on step 5/1. Like, they would be at that same hourly rate that we just hired them at. What this does is it allows our long time and experienced bus drivers to receive a step at the placement they're at. That's how I calculate this. So they're not going to move down, like they're going to stay at their current step. It's the new folks that would kind of go back to where they were before we implemented the higher step 5. So that would take some thinking through, but that's how it's calculated.
I mean, when I looked at the dollar amounts, that's what I thought. I mean, like Scott, for example, is at step 6. So he would be like he would be at the new step 6. And I mean, Scott, like, you've looked at this, did the number figures that were up there look close to what you expected?
If they leave the drivers at their current position, that is kind of what the people that I've talked to are hoping for. My question is, what about the other people that just got moved up to step 5 that were 2, 3, and 4? Are they going to go back to 2, 3, and 4, or are they going to go back down to 1 with the step 5 people?
In my calculations, Scott, I was having them go back to their step before we did the step 5 move. So wherever they were placed on before that, they wouldn't stay at the new step 5. They'd be back to their current placement. So everything would kind of revert. That was really an interim emergency ask so that we could get that starting wage up to be competitive. So I'd invite my.
Sorry.
No, oh no, that's okay. I'll be quiet for a sec.
So the people that were here for 3 years that were on step 3 got moved to step 5 are going to go back to the new step 3, which will be 2 steps higher than what they're getting right now.
Okay.
Follow, but
the numbers looked right to me. I mean, at least close from what we were figuring. I mean, that's good. Like that's that was certainly something we were hoping for. I mean, and I know that, like, if you didn't do that, it would be hard for the people who are topped out then. So there's that. I mean, that's good. I think that helps get us closer to a deal. I think the other big concern that, like, the team and the department has is that, like, it is going to cause some compression between, like, the difference between what trainers and mechanics are making and what drivers are making. I mean, how big of a group is this? I know that they get, you get reimbursed for everyone in transportation, but, like, and I know that you guys aren't feeling like you have the same kind of, like, recruitment and retention problem with these other classifications, but, like, it is going to sort of screw up your pay scale. overall, because you're going to be moving up, you know, the kind of bigger group, and then a lot of these other classifications are going to be much closer. I mean, and we've talked about it. I know you guys have said, well, if they want to become drivers, then by all means. But it sounds like that there's a lot of training that goes into being a trainer too. You know, and I guess, like, you know, one things that we've really, you know, been thinking about is, like, it seems like it should be an increase for the entire department. Looks like Melody and Scott both have their hands up.
I was just gonna, Rob covered it, that by not moving the ones F through I, it is gonna compress that, because the mechanics mechanics, bus driver, the trainers and the routers, they were at 474 difference, and now they're gonna go down to $1.58 difference between the two steps for starting salaries. And while those groups may be small, they're not going to be happy. And so I think we need to look at the department as a whole, because it's also going to spread the gap between A, B, and C, especially at the transportation assistance. I know Scott and Lori talk with them. They come to them with these things. So I don't know if they have any, if they can echo this or not, but I just wanted to talk about the difference, compressing the salary schedule.
Scott.
Well, I think the thing that is kind of being missed is that the fact that the trainers, the routers, the dispatchers, the mechanics, all have gone through this same training program that we have. They have to have their CDL as part of their license. So in my opinion, they should be included in this pay hike, because they are going through the same process that we are. And they have to live by the same standards, whether they're on the bus or in their own private vehicle. As a CDL holder, we get half the market value, for say, of like a DUI. You can have a 0.08. I could blow a 0.04 and lose my job, even though I'm not in a school bus and it has nothing to do with the school activity. And that's the same with the mechanics and everyone else that's there. I know that a couple of years ago, we went through a process where the drivers got a raise, and I wasn't on the board at the time. And I thought it was kind of the shoddy deal that the mechanics and the routers and the dispatchers weren't part of that raise back then too.
Yeah, I think we need to look at maybe down the road a little bit instead of coming back every 3 years, and we try to prevent coming back with either a different classification or even the bus drivers again. Because right now, by doing the step 5, which is above Beaverton, but I think it's like 20 cents above Beaverton. So short of kicking as it was put today in our meeting, kicking the can down the road, and coming right back here in another 3 years, I think we need to look a little deeper myself.
I mean, how many people are we talking about, Michelle? What's the, like, you know, what's the impact of, I mean, the vast majority of the department is drivers, right? I mean, and maybe it's Carol.
Yeah. So it's, I want to say there's currently, I want to say 149 drivers, and they move a little bit. And 4 dispatchers. I think there's 4 positions, Carol.
Yeah, the
a
total
total-
beyond across what I call core staff is, I believe, 20, it's either 24 or 26, spread out between routers, trainers, dispatchers, mechanics, and then front office, because our office manager also retains her driving credentials.
Is that a requisite, Carol, or is that just something you've asked for?
It isn't. It's not in her job description. I have to double check. It did not used to be, but she was a driver, and so before she became our office manager, and she maintained that to help out because we were so short. So she's maintained it.
mean, you guys often will kind of step in to drive, right? Non-drivers, I guess I should say, including like.
Yes,
Yeah,
last year, everybody with a license was on the road every day with the exception of Terry, the office manager. She filled in as needed. And the supervisors and myself.
Lori has her hand raised.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, Carol, but I've been here like 8 years, and in that time frame, I don't think a year has gone by that a mechanic or the dispatchers in particular haven't been on the road, you know, and a lot of times more than once a day, once a week. It causes a stress for, I know, our mechanics to get our buses, you know, maintained and things done there. And our dispatchers this last couple of years, you know, they've done more than just step up a little bit. They've stepped up 100 times fold. I mean, they're out there, you know, even doing their job through the radio while they're driving, which as a driver, that's tough to do, you know, and to leave them out of this and to leave our mechanics and all of the other positions that hold CDLs seems like we're being a little remiss as to what they do. I mean, they have went through all of the training that we have went through. Our trainers have went through more training than we have. And they haven't even been able to train a lot of times because we're so short. I think we run the risk of losing trainers and dispatchers and mechanics if we don't take them into consideration. That's just my thought.
For those who aren't part of transportation, if you want to have a fun afternoon, you should be on the radio when we have Carol in main office and Jason in north office, and they're the only ones in the building and they're trying to run dispatch while we're out on the road. It's immensely stressful for Carol, I know for sure, but for us as well, because we can't get the support back that we need because our mechanics aren't there to come and help us.
see, I mean, I think you'll probably notice too that we're not saying, you know, because we sort of worked with you guys for the whole step 5 thing. You know, and I think that overall, like what you guys are proposing for the drivers and dispatchers is fair. So you're not hearing us like push on a higher amount like we might do in a normal bargaining. But I think where we're leaning much more so is to include everyone in the department. And we sort of said that from the beginning. So I don't know if we need to like caucus and make a counter proposal.
Yeah, I think that seems appropriate. And Lori, I just want to make sure that your hand is raised still. So if you needed to share anything else, I always when I see people's hands raised, the teacher in me goes, "Oh, I need to make sure that we give everyone an opportunity to share."
So why don't we, my team, go back over to, we have a Google room set up.
Yeah.
So we will, I guess we'll leave this room and go over there. And then we'll be back. The same but different.
Okay.
All right. So were you going to say something there, Melody?
No, I was just going to say that Rob has something to present and I'm going to let him, and then Scott and Lori would like to say stuff. So I'll mute while they talk.
All right, let me make sure I'm all right. You guys seeing this? Okay, so like what we're proposing, it's kind of interesting because we have this like A pay scale, which is bus washers, and we don't think that they're actually employed during the year. So we're thinking of maintaining them as they were. And I know that's not a huge deal, but everyone else we're proposing to move to a similar, to the same, like starting off at step one for everyone except for A. Like for example, B would start off at step one at 2139 and go up to 2736. And that I believe is are the transportation assistants. So that's basically our proposal, which I'm sure isn't a huge surprise to you guys. And Scott and Lori, do you guys want to?
The reason that we felt that we needed to include the transportation assistants in on this proposal is that their value for the driver is immeasurable. Not only with the medically fragile children that we all have to take special classes or special training for some of the medically fragile students, but also the behavioral challenge students, where it's different in a school classroom environment, where if there's a problem, you can evacuate the rest of the students and let this child have his tantrum until things calm down. You can't do that in a bus. The transportation assistant is there to maintain peace, so to speak. And we don't have the backing of an administrator down the hall that can be there in 2 minutes. It could take hour to hour and a half to get an administrator out to a bus. And quite frankly, it's easier to get a police officer to come to the bus. And that's not where our goal is. We want to take care of things ourselves. Not only that, we're getting more transportation assistants now that are riding on big buses because we are so overcrowded that there's just no way that a driver can drive this 30,000-pound death trap through traffic with 55 kids in the back and maintain everything in a safe environment. So to keep our drivers, we are relying more on the transportation assistants, and that puts them at such a higher value that we felt that they should be included in this proposal.
Lori, did you have stuff you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, we also feel that their value is that of like an SEA in the classroom, because they go through a lot of the same training, except that they're in a much smaller classroom. And maybe they don't have as many students, but they also don't have the aid of a teacher or another assistant with them. I mean, granted, sometimes we do have buses that have more than one assistant, but that's not sustainable all the time. And also looking at what they have to know in the environment that they do this, I think that their position is as important as that of a driver to move the bus safely down the road with the students. Because if you have a child that goes into a seizure, say, and you have to pull that bus over, it is usually your aide that is tending to the student while you are translating all of that information across the radio, plus keeping the other students calm if you have a bus full of students. So I think that, you know, they should be making as much as what they would if they were in a classroom. That's all I have to say for the moment.
All right, thanks, guys. I'm trying to remember if we had a long-ranging discussion as a group. I'm trying to think if we've touched on everything. I feel like we probably have. Is there anyone else who wants to speak? Or do you guys have questions about our proposal?
I know that Bethany made a really valuable comment while we were in our session about going from her classroom into life skills classroom, which, you know, we do transport a lot of life skills kids, and how different it is going from, you know, a classroom that you're used to a different classroom. And our aides, a lot of them will end up going, say, to a different classroom with a different student, you know, the classroom being the bus. And, you know, they're having to learn right then and there about these students. And it's, you know, can be, we have aides that are district aides and they're on a different bus, you know, maybe a couple times a day. So their skill level is measured, you know, by how many students they've been in contact with, and they have to, like, if they have a medically fragile kid on one bus, they need to learn all about what that child needs. And then the next bus they go on, maybe it's a behavioral situation and they need to learn those triggers. So I do think they're just as valuable in our world of getting kids to school safely.
I think Scott sort of made the point, but I think like another thing that kind of came up, you know, is it having like an aide on the bus is really huge help to new bus drivers who might otherwise leave their job as a bus driver because it's kind of a shock. But if there's somebody else there with them, that might be the difference between them, you know, continuing to be a driver. And then that, you know, that adds quite a lot of value for the assistants in terms of like, you know, retaining the drivers that you guys do have.
So do you have any questions for us? It looks like Connor stepped away for a moment, so.
Like I can share what we talked about in caucus with the team's blessing, and Saidi and Carol, you guys can chip in as well. But really, you know, we have to maintain our focus on those positions that require CDL. And so unfortunately, that is everybody above transportation assistance. We're not experiencing a shortage in that area. They don't have the same level of certification. So I definitely appreciate your advocacy and know how important they are to those drivers. But they're not a standard in most districts. Most districts have just a driver. So I would love to hear from my team based on, you know, what we talked about in terms of moving the whole schedule, and really that holding of a CDL and being able to move in there and assist when we need assistance was really what we're focusing on as a district. We need drivers, right? So I'd love to hear from the rest of our team.
Well, I'm not part of the team, but I'd like to make a comment if I can. If we don't, I believe, and I believe the rest of my team, if we don't look at the transportation assistants while they do not hold a CDL, they are a valuable part of the transportation department. And I don't think anybody on this screen is going to disagree with that statement. But I am just very concerned about what's going to come across to them, because this time and last time and anything to compare the wage study, they're often getting pushed down further and further and further. They're not going to feel valued or appreciated. This is twice at least that I know of where the transportation assistance did not get picked up on the 3% or now. So I just think we're going to, I don't know what they're going to do. You guys seem to think that there's not going to be a mass exodus of a transportation assistance. And I know we just hired 3 more from the SCA departments, but right now they're under the impression that we are in this room, in this meeting, looking at all of transportation salaries. That is what they were hearing. That is what they were told. And I just think we're going to do them a great injustice if we do not at least look at them and try to work it into this proposal somehow, because they're great people. They really are. They do a great service. Much like an SCA, sometimes they are between the driver and the student when that student acts up or has a meltdown. And just because they don't hold the CDL, our transportation department would not be what it is without them.
Thank you,
Well-
Melody. One thing that I do want to point out too is that I know that they, did not get a pay increase the last time that we had to, we did a special session for transportation in this time. But one thing is that all transportation assistants were increased by 30 minutes in their day this fall. And I did that by eliminating some other positions to do that, because I thought that was important that they went back to an 8-hour day. So they did get that increase. That did help with making more money. It's not huge, but it was something to go back into their favor.
Michelle?
Thank you, Carol. Yeah, and I just wanted to add, I know we worked really hard, but we settled very late last year. So there was a big retro pay, and then there was a significant increase with a new additional step for transportation assistance as well. So again, I think if we look at it from a district perspective and what the needs are right now, I hope that you guys can understand that requisite of having the CDL and training and being able to step in as a driver, that's why we're here today. So there may be things you can consider as a team where whoever gets a significant increase today, and we're agreeing informally to everyone C and above, right? To have that movement. And that's also significant to the transportation department. That's what you guys just talked about. So just being really thoughtful about that. What we're going to do is run into the education assistant hourly rate, and we're gonna experience an exodus there with the shift like that. So we have to be super thoughtful system-wide, and I just hope you guys can understand that. And kind of really, we've tried to be very clear about what our goal is here tonight.
No, we appreciate that. But so am I hearing that your guys' proposal is, your guys' counter is to increase basically everyone except for the education assistants?
I'll
Was
let's let Kana respond to that. She was concerned about some other effects that it might make outside of the transportation schedule.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. I've just been thinking about, like, when we add things, we have to look at the whole system, and that's part of, our role in looking at that across, all of the salary schedules. We don't, like licensed, have one salary schedule. We have 9 salary schedules. So I have, part of my role is to look at those things. And I think instead of saying that we're not going to do anything for transportation assistance, I want to clear that up and say that we have done some things to try to address that. Are we addressing that here? That is true. We are looking at that differently, but we have tried to put some things forward to address some of the pieces that you've brought forward, and really thinking about that CDL license And that's, you know, part of what we have to do when we're looking at the whole system. And I also understand, you know, you are looking at it from the salary schedule and looking at, you know, kind of where the need is. And I heard Scott and I heard Lori, you know, talk about the value that our TAs bring to the work and the things that they do. And there isn't, without a doubt, in all of our minds, the value of the work that they do and the importance of that work. But I think what we're trying to say is that we were targeted in our focus in regards to 50, you know, bus drivers, 25% of those positions not being filled, and then folks that are connected to that work regarding their role of having to fill in and drive. And we heard you say that at, you know, at the end of before we went into caucus. I don't know if there's, Saidi, if you want to add anything else.
I think everything has been already shared. We can reiterate this over and over again, but like it's not about us not valuing our transportation assistance. It's about really focusing on what our biggest need is right now, and our biggest need is to be able to recruit and retain bus drivers, and anyone who holds that CDL, if that's the direction that we're going to, then so be it. If they can drive a bus, that's what we need right now, and we need to focus on that. And that's what we came to the table to do today, was to focus on that.
I mean, we appreciate that movement. I mean, it seems like that. I just kind of want to be clear that you guys are proposing increases for the other, not just D and E, right? But also E, F, and G. Is that right?
I believe they said C and up. Is that what you said, Michelle?
Yeah, that would be C through I.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't scroll down far enough. Okay, I mean, that's really good movement. I mean, we could probably do a quick counter. I mean, should I just do it, team, or do we need a caucus, or?
Well, Michelle has to leave at 7.
Yeah.
And it's 7:02. So we're on borrowed Michelle time.
I'm holding out for you guys.
Well, hold on, let me just
So
give me 1 second here. Because I need to leave too, but you know, if I feel like we're getting fairly close. I guess it's already in here. I mean, so we sort of anticipated this, you know, this conversation. We really do appreciate the movement on the other pay grades. What we're thinking is what if we moved the transportation assistance, and we could have a conversation about C. It seems like C might affect like one person. But what if we move the B grade essentially to step 3? That would put them below the SEAs. I'm not sure how they would that would jibe as far as EAs. I mean, I've heard you guys sort of say, look, we don't want to compress them against the EAs or maybe SEA positions. But if we move them so that they started at 2016 and topped out at 2554, had the same 9, except for this one would be, sorry, that last one would still be 4%.
I feel like that's enough of an impact because there's so many of them that I need to go back and do some analysis, and I haven't had the opportunity to do that tonight. So maybe we should just go ahead and come back together on the 21st. Because I feel like there may be some challenges you guys are anticipating in terms of getting this vote approved. And we can have some discussions around the implementation as well. I still appreciate what happened here tonight, but I don't think we're in agreement just yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think we do need to discuss too, like how we can help each other get this passed, because I think it is going to be a challenge. You know, I think the transportation's going to be all for it, especially now, or at least a good chunk of them, depending on how things shake out with the the transportation assistance. But we are going to need to really make the case for everyone who's not in transportation about why this is important. And I think you guys have already made a lot of good points. We've been working on some points too that we can make, you know, but we should think about how we want to do like communication on this, possibly pull you guys into some meetings just to help make the case. And if it would be helpful for you to sort of go and work your magic, Michelle, like, and we could come back on the 21st. I mean, we could also come back sooner. I mean, but we've got the 21st on the books. What are you thinking, Kana?
I'd like to see us be thoughtful and impactful. Like, this needs to be a lasting change. We've experienced coming back and coming back and coming back, and we thought we had this fixed before COVID. So, I mean, I really do want to be thoughtful about it. I want to be thoughtful about the long-term impact. And I hope that our full team here understands the true long-term impact of what we're talking about. And that I do think we should probably just come back later.
Yeah, I mean, we were all hopeful that we could do this, you know, tonight and get it done, but I think you're bringing some other things that we need to look at more just within this salary schedule, but also more broadly. And then also, I did share the slideshow with Hannah, and I think she's going to send that off to you, or already has, so you have access to that as well. Yeah, I think we're going to have to come back on the 21st. We're like a palindrome, the 12th, the 21st, for those of you that palindromes can be read back and forth. They're so fun. And we'll be looking at kind of bringing a counter proposal to what you kind of have shared here. I think we're very close, and I'm hopeful we won't need to use the whole time, but we'll go ahead and plan from 5 to 7, and we'll do it in the same fashion. I think that's easiest for folks, just because you don't have to drive from wherever. You can click and return to your family.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all appreciate that you guys, I mean, you guys listen to everything we said before. It seems like your counter will move quite a bit. We appreciate that. You know, so I kind of agree that I think we'll be able to knock this out pretty quick. Melody, do you want to, do you have anything else to add?
No, I just appreciate the conversations, and we'll just get back. Michelle, hit the magic buttons, make those numbers work, and let's see if there's anything we could do for the transportation. I know they were given the time, but so was everybody else. I know that, you know, but I just want to be able to address something with them so that they know. Because I know we sit here and we say in these rooms that we value them and they're valued, but that's not what they're hearing out in the transportation. So even if we could take them to step 3, that'd be great. So, and yeah, and if you guys could help us with selling it to the rest of the classified, because that's where it's going to be a tricky.
Yeah, I think that 86.6%, when we dug into that, I was really surprised by that for me. And just, I feel like I've learned a lot in this process, and I really do appreciate the collaboration and conversations that we've been having. I really feel like everyone here wants to come with the solution, and so that we can ensure that kids are getting what they need. So I really appreciate that, and I value that.
That number, I think that number's gone up from the last time I heard. So, but that's good. So
good night, Michelle.
Okay. So
Thanks,
then on
Michelle.
the 21st,
Yep, we'll come back again on the 21st. So be looking for Hannah's email with the panelist Zoom thing. I said thing. And I'm sorry. I'm getting a little silly.
After
I'll stop
7,
myself.
fun has changed.
Okay.
You're coming up on hour 12, kind of probably.
Teenagers in the house.
All right. Well,
Okay.
thanks again for your time, and we'll connect on the 21st. And if there's any other questions or things that you have, we'll connect at that time. Thank you,
And
everyone.
I'll send this proposal, the spreadsheet that I came up with, to you and Michelle, Connor.
That would be great. Could you include Hannah in that too?
Of course. Yeah, and she could forward it on to whoever.
All right.